Hi, Rhonda. Welcome to the Counterfeit Sleep podcast. I'm so excited to be talking with you today because I know your story a little bit and I know everything that you've been doing, and I just can't wait to share it with the audience. So, can you start telling us where you were at the beginning of your journey?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tara, for having me. Airway is my passion, and I love to share my story because I think it might help others find where they should begin. So, as a child, I had all of these comorbidities from oral breathing. I had chronic ear infections, enuresis. I had migraines. I was retained in kindergarten over, inability to stay focused, and I was always tired. I had angular cheilitis. I had a tongue tie that no one knew about. I had crowding, malocclusion. Like I had all these signs that I wasn't breathing properly, specifically during sleep. And, providers at the time didn't know what they didn't know. So my orthodontist didn't talk to my dentist, who didn't talk to my ENT, who didn't talk to my family physician, who didn't talk to my mom about the root cause because they didn't know what they didn't know. And at the time, they still, causation versus correlation is still tricky to this day. But once I started digging through all the literature, all the research that has been done on mouth breathing, I was able to go back into my childhood and start connecting all of the signs and the symptoms.
Oh, great. And actually, if I could just interject for a second, so I think some of our listeners may not even be aware of some of the terms that you were using there because they just might not have medical background. So when you're talking about, enuresis and whatever, just break that down a little bit for us. Like, what was a typical day of school like for you as a kid? What did it feel like?
Oh gosh, I remember, always being hyperactive and tired all at the same time. One of my patients actually says it feels like I'm always running. And it's ADHD like symptoms, and if you don't clinically diagnose a kid with ADHD, yet they still have all these comorbidities or these symptoms that relate to that, but they aren't quite that. It was so hard for me to sit down and focus on something. I never enjoyed reading. Like I didn't enjoy school at all because I was just trying to stay awake.
I hear you. I've heard, I know, and I had a similar thing on the other end of it, which if people listen to episode 1 of the podcast, they'll hear my story, but the same thing, all this range of things that, I think the most dangerous part, and this is, you sort of alluded to it, is that as all of these things are happening, you don't really question them, right? You just think this is just how it is for me. Like for me, I was just the kid with the runny nose, and that was just my thing, and it builds up. You never start to question it. You never start to wonder, hey, could there be something driving all these, seemingly unrelated symptoms, right? So tell us then, how did you get to that point and where you finally said, hey, wait a second, maybe there is something else going on here. What was your kind of trigger, your tipping point?
Oh, okay. So I'm a dental assistant. I've been doing that at the time for 17 years. And I went to a CE course where they were talking about sleep appliances and how they were the latest and greatest thing. And, these people that were CPAP incompliant and that didn't want to have air shoved down their nose every night, they could put this oral advancement device in, and it could bring their mandible forward and open up their airway. And, I started looking at it, I'm like, well, they spent the entire day talking about plastic, but no one mentioned why it happened. And so I just dove in head first. I wanted to know why.
Yeah. And thankfully for us, you did that. So let's make sure, again, let's break it down a little bit. So as a dental assistant, you were going to a continuing education class, and it was to find out about this appliance that could help people who had diagnosed sleep apnea, but wanted an alternative to the CPAP machine that is so hard to use for so many people, right? And so then as this professional, you go in and it opens your eyes a little bit to this real personal thing almost, where you're like, wait a second, so why? And you make that dive in, you're going through the literature, and then what happens? What do you find out?
Oh, I found out that it's no one thing that causes mouth breathing, and it's no one solution. So yes, I had an undiagnosed tongue tie. Yes, I had plagiocephaly. So like when I was born through the vaginal canal, I had asymmetry, and I never saw an osteopath to help balance out my skeletal structure after that. And I looked at, how my environment impacted my allergies, always having the runny nose, kind of like you did, and not being able to adapt, as well. It's common, but it doesn't make it normal. And so I went down all the rabbit holes. Osteopathy, how dentists can actually change the architecture of the mouth to give room for the tongue. I went through nutrition, understanding inflammatory foods and mucus causing foods. Like, there's so many layers. I've learned breath work. It's funny because this morning, I realized that breath work is meditation. And I'm like, if you would have come at me when I was 37, I found all this out, and you said you need to meditate, I'd be like, no way, that's too foo-foo.
Right,
no,
right.
But it is breath work. It's finding your breath. It's becoming one with your body, like knowing, just becoming conscious of it. That's the first step.
Yes, yes. And it's the funny thing too, because I'm a Buteyko breathing specialist by training. And one thing I find with my clients is, when I start asking them questions, they'll say, no, I don't have any problems with breathing. I can breathe through my nose, no problem, nothing. And then you'll do an assessment to see how clear each nostril is, and to assess how often they're going from nose breathing to actually mouth breathing. And all of a sudden those light bulbs start going off. And then they say, like, how come I never realized that I was doing, like, I had such poor breathing habits, essentially. And I say it's because, breathing is the one thing you do all day, every day. So it has to go to the back of your mind, right? You'd never get anything done if you had to focus on your breathing all day. And of course, when something goes out of your mind, it's very easy to develop bad habits, which is exactly what I did as a kid. Sounds like exactly what happened to you as a kid, and so many other people. Yeah. So then what did you do as you really started finding out? I mean, how did you find out that all of that breathing stuff was really impacting your sleep, and that was really then driving every problem that you were dealing with?
Well, first you have to learn what normal sleep is. I told my doctor the other day, I'm like, we need to talk about boogers, poop, and pee way more often. Because if I known that pooping every morning was normal and natural for the body, I would have known years or decades ago that my body wasn't normal. I think that was the first step. It was finding out what normal sleep was. And that did not include my sleep, where I was snoring so loud I was waking up my husband, where I never stayed in the same spot all night, where I got up several times to go to the bathroom. I woke up with a dry mouth or a headache, like my teeth grinding. I think that was the biggest one. My teeth, my canines started getting really short. I broke a front tooth. My face always hurt. I'm like, okay, so that is not in the category of what normal sleep is.
Right. Yes. And it's so important. I'm so glad you said that, because all of those things, like you said, if you get used to it, it becomes your norm and you don't question it, but it doesn't mean it's normal. Great. So then you started realizing all this, you're putting all these pieces together, right? You're probably getting crazy with excitement, thinking, wow, maybe my life could start to feel different. I know I felt like that. And so what did you do? What kind of treatments did you pursue? And how did you know, where'd you go from there?
Right. And so the first step was Buteyko breathing. So I had to learn to slow my breath. Because of my oral breathing, I've always been an overbreather. So I have very low CO2 tolerance when I first started. And so once I learned how to slow my breath, then I was able to open up my nose. And then once I got my nose open, I was able to focus on tongue and lip posture. So then I went to myofunctional therapy, which helps to strengthen the orofacial muscles. And so after that, I went into, just understanding how my environment and what I put in my body, and how, like Dr. Lau says, impaired mouse syndrome, all of the things that I was doing in the SAD diet, which is the standard American diet, that was causing inflammation in my nose. I'm like, well, if this is the guy I'm supposed to use all the time, how do I get him to work better? And, I do Buteyko lip tape. I do the myotape every night.
I do too, and we all do in my family as well. So just tell a little bit about that, what you do and why you just have decided to do it.
Yeah. So what I understand is, even with myofunctional therapy, it takes a long time to rewire your brain, especially for physiological rest posture in a nocturnal state. So
and let's just make sure we put that into everyday language So,
how my mouth works when I sleep.
There you go. Good. Okay.
Sorry, guys. So I started with like a micropore tape. I did that for a while, and within a week, my hip pain was gone, my grinding was gone. I didn't get up to pee. I'm like, there is something magical. How can a little tiny piece of tape change my life?
Right.
Like, how is that normal? And so I evolved, and then I went to Somnifix strips, which, kind of go across the lips with a little tiny hole. And then I realized more and more, I love all the products. They were all accomplishing the same goal, but I really do like myotape just because my kids like it as well. Since it goes around the periphery of the lips and not on the lips, a lot of people are more apt to try it.
It probably feels like less invasive, if you will. Yeah.
And even with myofunctional therapy, which is, something I've been doing for years now, which is strengthen my lip tone and reset my posture, I still like to sleep in the tape. Just like Patrick says, because it's a comfort. It's part of my process now.
Yeah. I would agree with that too. I've been doing it for years as well. And I'll find on the occasional day, if I'll have a poor night of sleep, like right now, I have a 6-month-old puppy. So I had a few months there in the fall where I was not getting uninterrupted sleep, but not because of my breathing, because of this puppy, And so I'd be tired during the day, which, was like old me. But I'd go to take a nap and I wouldn't put on the tape, and I would feel such a difference because I guess, when you sleep, you relax, all the stuff. So if I do have to take a nap now, I make sure I do indeed put it on, and I absolutely wear it every night as well. I agree with you completely. It is a game changer for getting a good night's sleep, for sure. And just tell a little bit about, just break down myofunctional therapy, because I know 5 years ago I had never heard of it, right? So just to put a nutshell on that, for people who are curious and want to go, learn more about that.
Absolutely. So if you live your entire life with your tongue on the bottom of your mouth, guess what happens to your tongue? Well, the muscles don't develop properly. You don't utilize them the way they were designed to be used, and your lips being open are weak. So myofunctional therapy actually rehabilitates the muscles of the tongue and the lips and surrounding orofacial muscles. But I like it. They're like a personal trainer for your face. So not only am I going to show you which muscles are compensating for the other muscles, but I'm also going to tell you how to strengthen the ones that are weak. And then I'm going to show you how to use them once you develop them. So proper swallow of liquid and food, proper rest posture, proper breathing, moving the food around your mouth, just the whole capacity of chewing and swallowing. I mean, we swallow spit all day, every day. And if we're not doing it properly, it has compensations. I mean, there's going to be and for a lot of our airway listeners, if you haven't been utilizing your muscles in your face appropriately, you'll notice that the mentalis, which is that muscle on your chin, will become dimpled. So from years of overuse and not incorporating the orbicularis, which is the lip muscle, it's a sphincter muscle around your lips, there's signs everywhere. I mean, once you guys start to dig in and you start getting visual cues of what it looks like when somebody grows up with an undiagnosed airway disorder, you can see it on their faces, literally.
I agree. I think of like you're saying, the alternate, the use of alternate muscles, right, to compensate really when you're not doing it right. Over time, that builds up. It's almost like, the Grand Canyon, right? You stand before that and you think, how did a little river do all that work? Well, it's the same thing. Years and years of swallowing the wrong way, or having your tongue in the wrong position. It adds up, and it has dramatic impact on our, the way we develop, and then of course the way we live. And it's funny too, like I said, I've been doing this for, I guess it probably 2015, I think, when I first started hearing about this. And it's funny, I'm doing all these things, writing about it. And my daughter was probably about 6 or 7 at the time. And we were traveling on the train one day, and she's looking around, and she leans into me, and she's whispers, "Mama, that man's a mouth breather," so it's I'm wow, she's noted, and that's what we want, right? And that's really the whole
awareness.
Counterfeit Sleep podcast, because when all these things are happening, it affects your sleep. And the reason we always say the counterfeit sleep too, and this was my case, and it sounds like it was your case too, that you may have been getting been in bed for the right number of hours of sleep, right? I know I had years, I went to bed at 10, I woke up at 6 a.m. and I actually felt great when I woke up. But come 11:30 or so, I flat out needed a nap, like no question. So that shouldn't be the case, right? If I get 8 hours of sleep, my battery should be fully charged and I should be able to go all day. So in effect, I was getting counterfeit sleep. I was getting sleep that looked like the real thing, but it had no real value and it was getting me in trouble, big trouble, right? For sure. And it sounds like you even had, where you were waking up in the night and all those kinds of things. And I think the other thing is it's progressive, right? Doesn't it get worse and worse, right? You add in working, you add in motherhood, all these things. And all the while you sit there and you say to yourself, oh, wow, of course I'm going to, be tired. I just started this full-time job. Oh, of course I'm going to be exhausted. I have a new baby. And you start believing this whole idea that this is just part of the package. And then you turn around and you say, no, there's another life, right?
Well, Tara, it's funny because like human beings are experts at creating excuses. And I did it too. I drank some water before I went to bed, or, my bed's not comfortable, or it's my pillow, or, I slept with these waistbanded pants and they're just too tight. Like we are so great at making excuses for, what happens in our lives. Absolutely. I get all these cavities and I've had this root canal and these crowns because, at that one time I drank a soda. Yeah. It's because the pH in your mouth is so disturbed from being dry all the time.
Exactly. It's so funny. I always hear, I don't know where your family's from, but my family's from Ireland. And I always hear people talking about those Irish teeth. Oh, they're the worst. They're the other thing. But now knowing what I know, I'm like, I don't have Irish teeth. I have teeth that have been subjected to mouth breathing my whole life. And really, it dries everything out, like you said, creates like a horror show for dental health, really, Mm-hmm. I totally get it. And what I encourage people to do is to think of it like I say, think about the XYZ formula here. If you have problem X, whatever it may be, don't just accept that that's how it is. Ask why you have that problem and make your first suspect your Z's, your sleep, because for so many people, that's the case, right? The most recent research we have says that 1 in 2 men are dealing with some form of counterfeit sleep. 1 in 4 women are dealing with some form of counterfeit sleep, and kids too. It's I was talking to a dentist in this airway field not too long ago, and he said as many as 90% of kids are at risk. And I said, oh my God, I haven't seen that in a study on that. And he said, well, just look at that they're saying like 90% of kids are going to need braces. That crowded teeth, it's all airway, which we get into in other episodes and stuff. But it's a huge problem. And so we have to start questioning and opening our eyes to the fact that, our sleep may be a problem and it may be driven by this larger breathing problem. But hey, isn't it like when you find that out, isn't it also like a gift, right?
Oh, God, I am superhuman now. Like anything is possible, and it's funny because, the longer you're on, and I do call it an airway journey because I really think that's what it is, because it's like an onion and you keep peeling back all these layers, things you had no idea were connected to your poor sleep and poor breathing. And it's fascinating because every day I wake up, I'm like, what new is going to fix itself today? Like, how much REM sleep did I get last night? What grew? Like, I get it super excited, like a kid in a candy store. Absolutely. It's almost like, how, like, when I used to diet, I don't diet anymore because I realized it was tied to my sleep, but I now have that wedding to get ready for, or that graduation to anticipate. Having your airway journey is like constantly having something to look forward to. It's Absolutely. Fascinating.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I hope that people that are, are listening are starting to feel like, wow, because I think the biggest thing is when you're that tired, you just don't feel like you have any energy to spare, right? I know I didn't, and then all of a sudden you find out, you've got this problem, that problem, the other, all these things. And you're just like, no, can't do it. But if you ask yourself, do that XYZ formula and say, well, wait a second. Is it possible that all those seemingly unrelated things are actually just one problem related to one problem, right? There's one cause that's kind of, driving all those things. It becomes a totally different picture because now you have just one problem to solve, and you can see all these other things resolve as you go. And that to me is like one of the biggest gifts too, because it just, you have like the opportunity to step into real health, real energy. You can regain your focus, you can regain, feeling good. Your relationships are going to change because all of a sudden you have the mental energy for everything. I mean, it's a godsend. So I hope that in hearing your story and through this whole podcast where we share, other people's stories and all the science behind it, all the solutions that we have now today, I hope that people will really be encouraged to take the step to look into this. So one thing I always like to ask Rhonda is, having gone through your airway journey, right, and realized that you were getting counterfeit sleep, and now you're not, right? You've been able to banish that, and definitely you've reclaimed your energy. If you could make a billboard to share a message with people to kind of let them know, what would your billboard say?
You know what? I can actually show you what it would say.
Okay.
It's probably backwards.
No, I can read it. Ask me how I breathe. Oh, perfect. How did you, how did you decide on that?
Well, it's one of those eye-opening questions. Like I said, I didn't know what good sleep was until I realized I had to learn about it. Like, ask me how I breathe. I will tell you it's slow and silent through the nose at rest. Mm-hmm. Ask me how I got there. It's an open-ended question. Ask me how I breathe.
Yeah. And, I'll take a second here to just connect the dots for people in case they don't, don't realize or haven't heard enough yet to know. But why is it that the way you breathe impacts your sleep? This is how I explain it. And, chime in if you have, a point too, or, whatever. If you have unhealthy breathing habits, right, like that lead to congestion, and you're breathing through your mouth, or you may be able to get through during the day. But the reason that those poor daytime breathing habits ends up becoming a problem at night is because when you're sleeping, you have to go through certain phases. And when you get into that deep phase of sleep, which is where you need to get for your brain to repair and recharge itself, when you get into that phase, your muscles relax, right? And so if you've been breathing poorly and you have congestion in your airways, small, either up here or down through the back, anywhere, when those muscles relax, now all of a sudden you're going to have much less space to let the air flow through. That's why you end up with snoring. That's why you end up with full stopping of breathing like you have in sleep apnea. And so what does your body do, right? Your body is like, hey, we're not going to let you not sleep. Not breathe. I mean, we're not going to let you not breathe. Wake up, which tightens the muscles up again. So your airways open up. And in fact, that's part of what grinding your teeth does as well, right? The bruxism, as they call it. It's a compensation by your body to kind of reactivate the muscles, which is great, right? Your body's like, we're not going to let you sit there without breathing. But what happens as a result? You don't ever get the sleep that you need, right? And so then we go back to all the problems that you were describing, right? That you started out with and went on from there. And so that's really the connection between the breathing and the sleep. And then, the large range of problems that continues. I mean, I don't know about you, Rhonda, but I have said to people that if I were in the health state that I was in before I kind of started this whole journey, which included, banishing counterfeit sleep from my life, if I were there and we had this current pandemic that we have, I would have been scared because I was not in a healthy place. Chronic sinus infections, asthma, all kinds of things. I don't have that anymore. And so I feel confident in my body's ability to protect me and fight off the coronavirus if I happen to encounter it. So I'm so glad that I, had my journey, because it's giving me greater peace of mind, even though it's all these years later, I'm healthier, And again, that's why, I think your story is so inspiring, because when listeners listen to that, they can say, wow, wait a second, maybe I can really go on that journey too.
Yeah. And I guess at the end of the day, we're all like snowflakes. No two of us are the same. So we will present with different symptoms or signs. But the best way to do this is to start with your breath and see how many of the symptoms were related to your breath that are going to surprise you.
Excellent advice. And also I have a quiz on my website where it talks about the signs of counterfeit sleep, all those random problems that, that can come up. So people can go to there too, if they want to start to try to connect the dots and see if, hey, maybe everything I'm dealing with aren't actually problems. Maybe they're just symptoms, So, well, I thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad that you went on your journey, because I think the energy that you bring to everything is exactly what we need to get our world to a happier and healthier place. And Rhonda, I know you're, tell us just if you can quickly, if people want to find, more connect with you, or I know you have a podcast as well, because I've been on it. Can you just tell us where people would find those things and connect with you?
Absolutely. So, if you're a dental assistant, want to learn more about the career field, or even I focus a lot of emphasis on airway health, because it really is one of the root causes for most dental conditions. I actually have a TikTok account. I'm 41 years old on Friday, and I am on TikTok. So I'm the airway champion. So it's _airway_champion. So there's like 55,000 of us on our airway journey. I do as much as I can to push the educators in the field. I got 60 seconds for each video to highlight some of the things that, you may not understand when it comes to oral appliances or breathing work, or, like nutrition. And so, yeah, the airway champion, find me on TikTok.
Beautiful. I will put a link to that in the website. Thank you so much, Rhonda. And I don't know if people say this to you, but are they inclined to sing the Beach Boys? Right?
Oh yeah.
Help me, Rhonda. Well, I know you're helping a ton of people, and I think it's tremendous, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Bye.